Brethren, good evening, good evening. I wonder if we start too early because John is still chewing. He's, he's making milk, you know. But regardless, oh man, brethren, at times I wonder if Jamaica is a real place because I am not so proud of the country. Not so proud. And I say I'm not proud because the level of corruption that we are reading about, that our prime minister is involved in, can't make Jamaican feel proud. We all should be up in arms demanding that this man either step down, vacate, resign. But it seems like not the more things happen. It's like nothing will move this man nor the JLP from office. So today we want to talk about the current situation in Jamaica. You know, we have seen the report table in the House, the IC report table in the House. A parliamentary committee look at the report and Delroy Chuck, Mr. Delroy Chuck, attorney at law, a man who I had a lot of respect for due to his work in the 70s to bring back Michael Unch Bernard from prison. And now this man is telling the committee, the parliamentary committee, that they should accept the IC report. I can only see one thing in all that reasoning from Mr. Chuck, and that is an attempt to undermine the Integrity Commission, which the Parliament, there's discussion in the Parliament about changing up the laws, and it seems like something is going bad, something rotten in Sweden, they would say, and I think we can say something is rotten in Kingston. I'm interested in hearing from you brothers. What is your take on this attempt to undermine the Integrity Commission? What is your take? Let me start with Lass. Lass, what is your impression? You saw the news. Is it that the JLP is on a path to undermine this committee? What is really happening, Lass?
When I look at it, I look at it from with a historical perspective in terms of there's nothing new that the JLP is doing. If we look at the period since the JLP government has come to power, we'll see that there has been lots and lots of corruption and accusations of JLP parliamentarians in a lot of misdeeds. And the position of the Jamaica Labour Party government has been the same. It has been either silent on those issues or they try to undermine whatever oversight body has come out against the corrupt practices. We see it in the situation in 2018, I think it was, with VAS Daryl Vaz and the UDC when Daryl Vaz was involved in some practices that resulted in the UDC disposing of property below market value. We saw it in the case of Vaz also when he tried to involve himself in some transaction with the Halliwell property. And what the GLP did, for the most part, they were silent. And then they came out against the officer, the contractor general, and they came out against everybody who raised a voice against whatever corruption they were involved in. We saw it also in the case of Petrojam. We see the same thing in the case of Cornwall Regional and the over expenditure and all of those kind of practices. So I am not surprised that the GLP is taking a position of not facing up to the criticisms and not facing up to the reality of the corruption that is facing the country as a result of their mismanagement and trying to undermine the Integrity Commission. It's not surprising for me.
Does what the JLP doing surprise you? You're mute, my brother.
Who, me?
No, Patrick. Yes, Patrick. What is your take? Is it that the JLP is avoiding the issue, or they are so corrupt that they don't want to pursue that?
The only thing I'd say that the GLP is, well, let me put it this way. First of all, I absolutely agree with what Las just said. I like the way all Las laid it out. That it's nothing new, right? It's part of the fabric of the foundation, or it's a fabric of the foundation of Jamaican governance, right? Because they really learned from, like I've said repeatedly, they learned from, the colonial masters who were master deceptionists, right? And masters of the game of corruption. And all they're doing is really just showing them true colors. That's all. It only seems alarming to us because a lot of us, is seeing this in black and white for the first time. Or for the first time tuning into, a discussion or a hearing around corrupt findings. But this is something that has, been part of governance before independence and even since then. What seemed to be absent more than anything else, and understandably so, is really bringing them to account when we find it in these glaring ways. And it's the same thing now, where you see people so astonished at what they're finding out that they don't not even sure what kind of action needs to be taken. But it's nothing new, right? And it's nothing that really surprised me in any way. And the only thing that the Holness is disappointed about is not the fact that he was acting in this corrupt way, but the fact that it is brought out into the open the way it was. right? Because usually they love to cover up things like that, right? And you don't, and you know, a lot of times it don't see the light of day in terms of public realization. But this time, you know, like them say, them catch them with them drawers down.
Patrick, John,
Well,
Patrick is saying that it's nothing new, but it's the first time we are hearing about a prime minister with 28 bank accounts. Who the hell need 28 bank accounts? John, give me your take.
yes, as I understand it, one of the ministers in the JLP government is basically recommending that the law be changed to eliminate the problem. So here we have an exposure of corruption or possible corruption. It smells like corruption to me. The people recognize it as corruption, and another minister in the same government, instead of proposing a solution to eliminate or to prevent corruption, is proposing to change the laws of the system to cover up the corruption. I mean, it's a reflection of the contempt that the government have for the people of Jamaica.
Explain that some more.
Well, I'm trying to think of an everyday example, but it's fairly straightforward. So what's the name of that minister again that you mentioned at the beginning?
Delroy Chuck.
Delroy Chuck, who is an attorney himself. The House of Representatives in Jamaica have more lawyers than the American Congress, are about the same. It's a place where it's full of attorneys. So what Chuck is saying is, let's do away with the need to explain how that corruption exists. Let's cover up the corruption by changing the law so that the what's the name of it? The
Integrity Commission.
Integrity Commission have no balls. It have even less power than it have now. Because you know it cannot do anything. It can only refer. What Chuck is really saying, let's do away with it so that there's no longer a question of impropriety as far as monies and accounts are concerned. This is a contempt, in my view, for the Jamaican people. Welcome, dear Mike and Herbie. I want to make one important point because the others who spoke made it appear as though the PNP have no history of corruption. I don't think that was their intention, but they didn't mention it. The history of corruption in Jamaica extends across both parties, JLP and PNP. I remember some of the biggest cases in the modern history of Jamaica occurred under the PNP as well, during the long time that PJ Patterson was Prime Minister. And therefore, it's inadequate to only identify one party and not the fact that we have a systemic problem to do with integrity. These are not leaders who will step down when they are exposed. These are not leaders where there is any power that we can bring them to justice, or we can inquire that they must step down. And therefore, I go back to my original proposal from last week. And that is the People's Manifesto, which is not owed to either the JLP or the PNP. It is saying these are the things that must exist where the people can exercise better control, better accountability than what currently exists in the country. And I'm glad to see Mike here because he did promise last week that he would leave a few words with you, Mike, the other Mike, as to what provisions. I'm sorry to also, Mike, because I was supposed to call Herbie to call you. I didn't really have your contacts. What provisions can we put in our manifesto that the people can call? For example, something like this. There should be a provision where the people have the right to remove or to request the removal of a minister of government when it's so blatant. There must be some transparency and accountability where the misuse or apparent misuse of public funds is concerned. That the people can say these are the procedures we are going to put into effect for a government minister or the prime minister. No one is above the law. Instead, what we are seeing is that in the JLP government, a member of parliament is trying to change the law so that there is no accountability, no transparency. Instead, the law protects the man for having 28 accounts, that he does not have to declare anything with them. He doesn't have to answer questions, etc. He can ignore the call of the public accountant. He can ignore the exposure, the publicity, because it looked bad on him. This is what his member of parliament is doing, is suggesting, whereas we must suggest the opposite. What should be in place that would prevent something like this from repeated occurrence? I didn't research up to find out which ministers from the PNP or which from the JLP have been corruption in the last 20 years. It would make your head hurt you, because none of them resigned. None of them were removed by the prime minister. I don't recall any of them being punished by stepping down or anything. This is not England, where there's some level of ethical principle that would make a man step down, like the former prime minister of England who have partied during COVID. He had to step down. He had to call election. That don't exist in Jamaica. We have tough back tough back ministers of government. There is no requirement to clean, and what we must be calling for is a cleanup of the system. Something that allow people to exercise the right to remove them, to lock them up. We can lock them up. Maybe we can institute some provision to lock them up. Or minimum, they must be removed while investigations take place or whatever. There need to be a system that is acceptable to working people and which allows us the leverage to cause change. So that is my argument. Black.
I must correct you.
I'm
John,
sorry.
I must correct you. The
Yes.
government, some ministers were moved. Wheatley was moved.
Who?
Wheatley around the energy issue. He was asked to remove. There are some other ministers who were asked to remove. But my question directed at Herb. John is saying that we need to put some mechanism in place. My worry, Herb, is that we have received the information. I think Jamaica, entire Jamaica, and the world is somewhat familiar with what we're talking about. The corruption, the Prime Minister, 28 bank accounts and what have you. But yet still we see no action by ordinary Jamaican people, not even the People's National Party. Yes, they had a press conference. But Herb, is that sufficient to address this problem? A press
No,
conference.
no. Look, several countries recently, especially in Asia, have literally protested and ran their prime ministers or presidents out of office with the protests. And it seems to me that in Jamaica, they are sitting back. This is not even the 9-day wonder, the news cycle wonder that we're talking about. We're talking about people who are too lazy to save themselves. Now, the diaspora got in trouble and got ahead of itself when we promoted the type of interference that's needed in Jamaica. Matter of fact, it's needed throughout the Caribbean because the same thing is happening. There is corruption amongst a lot of Caribbean leaders, English speaking Caribbean, that needs to be protested against, but it's not happening. And why is it not happening? Because somehow the private sector that should have shown balance here towards the government, if the private sector remains quiet and the private sector is happy with the situation, means that they're making a profit. It means that they've been bought out. And we don't hear peep from the private sector. So there's no balance. Everybody's on the same side. So again, it falls on the diaspora to speak up and speak out and to do something dramatic or do something that nobody's gonna like. And we've been doing that, and you see the blowback we've received, right? But the people of Jamaica have to be the ones that protest, that step up, and that come out and just keep I don't know if they need funding for it. That could be it. Like everything else costs money. They got to be away from their jobs and stuff. But the other big part of protesting is the education system, the students. We have what, 4 universities, I think, in Jamaica, and we don't hear peep out of them either. These are some softball students. Not even the political ones are saying anything or writing anything. So, how comes that has happened? How comes all of these students have had their fangs taken out, and they're hopeless. They're helpless. I don't know, Mike. Maybe they're waiting for one of us to come down and stir up the pot.
Well, more than that.
What do you think, John?
It's going to take more than that. Your point is correct. It requires a outcry. It requires, that is what the manifesto is aiming to do. That's what it's helping to do. But we need to set out something that allows for more rights. I mean, Mike mentioned one instance. I don't remember that weekly. I'm not going to debate that. The point is, it doesn't happen under the PNP or the JLP to speak of. I'm not saying they're both the same. However, it's evident that in this instance, whether it's protesting in the diaspora, protesting on the streets of Kingston, protesting among the private sector, or among the working people, it all amounts to the same thing. The lack of outcry and practical steps, which in my view are related to the current state of affairs. It's a very good manifestation of the state of affairs. Not even the PNP is going on the street. They have called a press conference. But this is the opposition party. If you look at Singapore, I think you were mentioning Asia.
Yep.
Singapore have a similar thing with a former prime minister, and the man is now pending going to court.
Nigeria.
Eh?
Nigeria recently.
Yeah, I mean, there are countries where this is happening. It requires a whole heap of shaking and pulling and tugging. The good thing about Singapore is that Singapore gained independence at the same time Jamaica did. The difference is so stark when it comes to integrity and corruption. The New York Mayor, somebody posted that. Again, this is one of the advantages in the American system. There is a system where the Office of Prosecution can come after you after they've done their due diligence and found out the extent of a problem. They don't depend on somebody in the system. But the political class in Jamaica, regardless of what flag they fly under or march under, are very quiet. And that only means one thing, which is what Herbert said. They prefer to keep this everything under the covers, quiet, no bawling, no crying. How much school could be built with the money that Jamaican politicians thief in the last 20 years? How much improvement to the hospitals could we have in a place like Jamaica with the money that politicians thief in the last 20 years? I mean, we don't have no police force or navy or air force carrier or jet where money is being spent, but the wastage of money in a poor country or relatively poor country is a issue of great concern. By the way, I should have mentioned that Ms. Hamilton's organization did issue a statement in relation to the IC report. I'm sorry I didn't print it out and to read it here, but they came out with a statement. This is a non-profit organization forget the term that we
Advocates
use.
Network.
Eh?
Advocates Network.
Is that wasn't the name?
That's the name. The
That was
Advocates
the name?
Network. Yeah.
Yes. So they came out with a statement, but it just fall on deaf ears. There is no string of outpouring of condemnation in the press. Either way, I mean, maybe on TV, I don't know. I haven't heard of any outpouring of condemnation. And therefore, it is what it is. We shouldn't accept it as a diaspora. And my recommendation is to include this provision under our People's Manifesto as to what steps, what agency, what policy, what provision can we put in our document to give voice to those who may need a little help.
Mike, you have heard John Arton talking about the manifesto. You are a CPA. Give us your take now. Why there's no outcry? Well, I listened to the radio, Jamaican radio this week, and there are people in the talk shows who are voicing, opposition and concern and what have you. But there's no mass movement demanding that the prime minister step aside or what have you. So give us your take now. You have looked at the report, Mike. Give us your take on what you think.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. John, before I get into it, Herb has my list to give to you. I did it.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Herb has the list of recommendations I made. So he's going to forward it to you.
All right.
I did forward it, guys. You should have seen it already.
So, but
When
anyway,
you mean this evening? This evening?
no, it should have been from in the week. I'm not sure when he did it, but it was done earlier this week. But Mike, let me just say this to you. In any regulatory environment, the ecosystem that exists must be designed to create accountability and transparency. It is very evident to me that the ecosystem of the Jamaican political system does not do that. That's one. Two, the reason the press has so much say in the United States and places similar to the United States is it appears to me that the Jamaican press at best is neutered, and they lack the courage to seek out qualified entities who can opine on just the information that's out there regarding the Prime Minister's conduct and even the conduct of the Parliament. And some of my recommendations that I made to John are along those lines of transparency. We should be talking about impeachment in the Jamaican context and have public hearings on it. But the Jamaican political system does not allow for that. Their attempt to silence the Integrity Commission, as if to say, we don't want to hear what you have to say, so go away, is indicative of the contempt, as John said, that the politicians have for the Jamaican people. What truly bothers me, though, is as a fellow Jamaican, we are not short of talent, integrity, or exceptionalism. John talked about the by the son of Jamaican immigrants. You want to talk about Trump going to trial for January 6th? The judge in the case is a Jamaican. Okay? I could go on. What I'm saying is that we don't lack standards in Jamaica. Jamaicans are not unfamiliar with standards. It is the Jamaican people who seem to be totally in the dark. And I agree with John. The opposition, there should be parliamentary procedures that force a public discussion of what the Prime Minister's finances have indicated. It's not just 28 accounts. You have a situation with ADMAT, the St. Lucian company that the Prime Minister had owned solely by himself. ADMAT had assets that were inconsistent with the earnings of the Prime Minister himself. ADMAT transferred its interests to Imperium when ADMAT ran afoul of the St. Lucia government's regulations. That transfer occurred when ADMAT was not in good standing with the thing to raise the issue or hold the Prime Minister accountable. What is even more surprising is that the IC started a review of the Prime Minister's finances without establishing ground zero for the investigation. What do I mean by that? None of us on this broadcast or people who are observing our conversation have ever seen a house built from the roof down. There's usually a foundation, then the walls, then the roof, then we do the interior. They started investigating the Prime Minister from 2019 thereabout. The bigger problem though is that when he was education minister and prior to becoming Prime Minister, there were more than adequate indications of possible ill-gotten gains because his salary as education minister was roughly $60,000 US, but at that point he already spent $697,000 to acquire his Beverly Hills place and other properties that he owned. In addition, the expenses that the Prime Minister used to finance the building of his sumptuous home were extraordinary in that the income the Prime Minister had could not have serviced the debt he incurred to build his home. In addition, after building his home, the Prime Minister was paying off the debts at a rate inconsistent with the revenue he brought in as Prime Minister. So what you have is the IC is in a position where it previously accepted the Prime Minister's filings from earlier years, I believe it was 16 to 18. And now that you're in 19 and these problems are being raised, these issues that are being discussed right now did not start in 19. So the IC has embarrassed itself in that it failed to set the proper scope of the investigation. What do I mean by scope? The IC should have established day one what numbers they were looking at and the origins of these numbers. But in trying to investigate assets, and then adding insult to injury to underscore John's point of the disregard there for the intelligence and respect of the Jamaican people, okay? the financials issued by the Prime Minister were clearly not issued by somebody competent. Why? Because they were trying to ascertain or determine what the Prime Minister's net worth is, and they took the Prime Minister's income to use it to define his net worth. But you can't use the income to define his net worth because the income he made is already in the accounts that are part of his assets, his liquid assets. So you're double counting it. So my beef, and I can be all over the place, I'm trying not to be, is that show respect for the scope of the task you're asked to review. That's what my challenge is to the IC. And if you show respect, get competent, licensed people. We know there are many competent Jamaicans everywhere, especially in Jamaica. Get somebody competent with my credentials, verbal reference to a forensic accounting that was done, yet there's no report to substantiate what the forensic accountant looked at. And with the numbers being dubious in the context that I just spoke, my question that begs is, what the heck was the forensic accountant looking at? And is he or she competent? Because I can tell you that the financial statement the Prime Minister has issued, from what I saw in the IC's report, are not quality statements. They seem to have been thrown together. And when the Prime Minister was asked questions, his response indicates the sort of disconnected mindset he had, in that, now you know you got caught with your pants down and you're scrambling to pull up your pants. You don't know the button away, so pull up the zipper. And that is the way I can describe the Prime Minister's responses to the questions that have been asked of him. But because the IC did not have qualified people in their ranks reviewing the stuff and recommending to them what their response should be, the IC has embarrassed themselves. So where does that leave them? I take control of the investigation. And what the FID should do is engage the tax department, TAJ, to say, we want these tax returns. And when you get the tax returns, it's easy to reconcile the effect on the financials that the Prime Minister has disclosed. And you can tell whether it's full disclosure or not. It's quite easy. We're not talking anything complicated here. If we say a tree was planted, it's either was planted using seeds or a sapling. It can't grow by osmosis. And that's the thing with the Prime Minister's financials. They have grown substantially. His debt has grown substantially, but his income does not support the way he has reduced his debt, unless he's living for free. The income must support the way you pay debt. In other words, if you have a credit card and you have a $50,000 balance on your credit card and you make $50,000 a year and you have a 5-year payoff schedule with your $50,000 credit card, not even talking accruing interest on the credit card balance of 20% a year, every year that you don't pay it off, you're adding back substantial monies between $8,000 and $10,000 a year if you're not paying it down in the way it's set up. If your salary is only, say, $40,000, $50,000 a year, you're making $4,000 a month. before taxes. Let me assume the Jamaican tax rate is 25%. If you're making $4,000 a month and it's 25% of the taxes, okay, that's income tax I'm talking about, not to mention the contribution to Social Security in Jamaica, which could be, I don't know, 5-6%, whatever that is, okay? All of a sudden, your $50,000 a year salary is down to $35,000 because 25% of 50,000 is 12,500 income taxes, 6% for Social Security, another 3,000. So 15,500 from 50,000 gives you 34,500, which gives you roughly just under $3,000 a month to dispose of. If you're servicing debt, that takes away almost 50% of your disposable income. Your disposable income is living expenses, like food and grocery. Obviously, premises don't maintain his own automobile. The government pays for that. And travel around the country, government pays for that. But when you start looking at what's left, and you have the debt service that the prime minister has, clearly you have to look at the hard numbers to see where does the prime minister find the cash flow to service the debt that he has incurred. So these are the questions that have not been addressed, in my opinion. And I could go on. And so what you have then, as John addressed earlier, is simply this: non-accountability in the political atmosphere. Neither party has shown the stomach to put rules in to hold members accountable for public funds. If you have proper administration of the financial sector, or the finances of the government rather, you don't have people dropping dead in the Montego Bay airport and they can't find a nurse or a doctor to call on. You don't have the run and the school teachers that are leaving Jamaica that I can tell they're not leaving for that much money. Because it's home for them. You don't have the brain drain going on because the economy can't absorb the graduates coming out of UWI, or it used to be called CAS, it's now called something else, and other universities that are in Jamaica. UTech. So what is going on? We have all these institutions which are just businesses. Their primary objective is not to educate anymore. Their primary objective is to make money. But notwithstanding this, the standard of excellence in Jamaica has afforded people to leave and no return, and for the brain drain. 2 years ago, the Minister of Finance, a man whose accomplishments and intellect I respect tremendously, said we may have to start importing people to do jobs in Jamaica, which stunned me, because the drain that's going on right now is totally unregulated and uncontrolled by the government. When you can give enough sticks, carrots out there to keep these people to stay home, so you're going to import talent. And the last comment I'll make is this: I am surprised that the Minister of Finance has remained so quiet in the last month. This is a learned man. I can tell. And his standing within the financial community is a good standing. His silence is deafening. And the political gamesmanship which occurred this week with the so-called commission within the parliament trying to kill the IC's recommendation for the report to go to the FID for further investigation is an eyesore. So if the FID and the TAJ get together, we will have answers. The question is, why are these people so afraid? Why are journalists so afraid? It lends credence to the level of violence in the Jamaican political system that seeks to silence conscientious objectors. And as a Jamaican, I'm heartbroken.
We all heard the Prime Minister
Before
talking
you
about
before you talk, I'm just wondering if I am experiencing
what?
a problem with the sound. When Mike was talking, it keep going in and out. Is this just me or did anyone else have that problem?
No, it's happening. It's happening. It's like a freezing of the sound and the picture, and then it releases.
It's just the bandwidth. It's the bandwidth, I think. So, you know,
Or it could be a Holness jamming our signals too. Who knows?
Okay, but what I'm saying is that all of what you guys said is correct, but you have a prime minister who threatening to sue anyone, and it seems like he's using that tactics to shut down discussion of this issue. So where do we go from here if he's willing to do that? And you know the libel law in Jamaica, there journalists ought to be fearful, eh? The Jamaican people I know are somewhat fearful because this guy is a bad man prime minister, that according to some.
you
Herb,
know,
you put something in the chat, Herb, about the recommendation from Mike.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we should just share it, Herb. Give me some. What exactly is Mike recommending?
I think
Private.
Martin is in the back.
Look in the private chat, Ian. That's where I stuck the stuff you sent. Hey, let me say this here.
Mike.
Let me say this here, folks. The problem with this investigation is like starting to read a book from the middle chapters,
Why
and
you say
then
that?
it doesn't go to the end. Because as a member of Cyberpol, we were requested to investigate, and we did a deep dive, in-depth investigation at least 5 to 7 years ago, and we handed it over to the PNP because the PNP were in the best position to prosecute this prime minister. This prime minister, we identified the source of his funding, right? And it was not the little bit of money you see them talking about now. All right. This prime minister had Minister Vaz going into Mexico City, picking up his money, and took it to St. Lucia. And how do we know this? We interviewed the guy who set up the ADMAT company in St. Lucia. When I say we had an attorney with us, we had the former head of the military intelligence unit with us, and we had the executive director at ICS with us, right? 4 people sitting with this gentleman, interviewing him. We didn't even have to interview him. He spilled the whole beans, right? The companies that were set up, the name of the companies, who were the directors, right? Where they put money for the elections, where they might have put money to allow Vaz's wife to run in her election, right? That was the first trial run. And then we saw the 2020 where they spent more money on that election. So when it comes to investigating, I understand the report was handed over to the Integrity Commission. Why it has not featured any at all is beyond me, right? But we're pushing now to have that published. The bottom line is you have a corrupt prime minister and a corrupt set of cohorts that was in his office, in the office of the Prime Minister. You cannot keep that information down. The information is out there. So now we're going to surface it again. Right? The Integrity Commission needs to look at that source of funding, which they have had evidence of, and which they need to use. They can't say, oh, it's pulled from the dark web and we can't understand it. Well, bring somebody in who can. The bottom line is the man was scheming from the get-go, from his days even before he became Minister of Education. And when he became Minister of Education, he was cheating on contracts. He was giving contracts to somebody who was listed as a loan officer in a company owned by him and his wife. So let's deal with the beginning, right? Let's look at how he made his money, and let's see how he laundered that money to bring it from ADMAT in December 2021, because that's the time St. Lucia told them they could no longer use the place as a depository. I guess they were feeling pressure from the US government. So he had to move his money out and bring it in. One key transaction that we really and truly have not spoken about is when KPMG, remember this, folks, the largest accounting firm operating probably in the Caribbean, did an investigation and turned it over to the Minister of Finance. And when he turned that over, the FSC facilitated the investigation because they hadn't done their jobs up to that point. They turned that investigation over to the Minister of Finance, Minister Clark, and shortly thereafter, the Prime Minister shut down his account. What was he trying to hide? Well, it came out during this disclosure by the IC that 143,000 US dollars was transferred from SSL into his account. So people need now to understand where that 143,000 came from. And by the way, you have SSL in St. Lucia and Barbados as well. Because when we were there, we saw the building, we saw the office. So it doesn't take anything to transfer money from ADMAT into SSL as an investment and bring it up to Kingston.
You said this was done by the Prime Minister?
Yes. The bottom line is they need to start looking at more sourcing as money laundering. And probably that's why they handed it over to FID. If they give FID that record, or if the member of parliament that we gave the report to gave the report to FID, I guess they would not trusted them because FID comes under Minister Clark, and we don't know how effective investigation FID would have done. I've been calling on them forever to do an investigation of the JFF. And we know JFF is corrupt. They have misutilized funds. They have missing funds. You have a going minister, Babsy Grange, who said she gave them $4 million to take care of women and men's World Cup qualifications. And we don't see. So I don't know about FID. They've been too quiet and they've been too controlled. And I think it's possible this is going to come down to maybe an outside investigation under Magnitsky Act by the local U.S. government investigative body there, the HSI, not the FBI. FBI is a lawyer there. He can assist HSI with the investigation. But the bottom line is, if they do an effective investigation of how many Americans at SSL were impacted by the transgressions of this prime minister, the leaders at SSL, the father and son, right, and other CEOs who had been there, that's what they need to dig into. Bring it up under Magnitsky Act and prosecute them under the Magnitsky Act, right?
We saw in Haiti, the US government did that with regards to some politicians in Haiti, the Magnitsky Act this week. But let's turn to Mike. You have access to that document.
It's actually, I'm trying to bring it up on my thing here, but if you,
It's in the chat, Ian. It's in the private chat.
Well,
it's not.
Why don't you just pull it up and let us talk about it?
Recommendations for good governance.
Yeah.
Right.
All members of parliament must have their tax returns audited by Tax Administration Jamaica annually. That's one.
Just do one at a time. Let's discuss one at a time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if each member of parliament has his or her tax returns reviewed by TAJ annually, that adds another level of review. So if anything looks unusual, that is not consistent with earnings they have, the TAJ has a responsibility or should be given. Because as it is, I don't think
you froze a while ago, Ian.
Yeah, freeze up.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on, John.
Just repeat
you're not talking close to the mic, or what? I don't know.
Not sure. No, the mic is right here on this computer. Maybe I switched computers, but
say it over then. You said that. Could you repeat that?
Yes, I will. If the TAJ has the power to review each member of parliament's tax return annually, they also currently have the power to make referrals for possible prosecution if fraud is found. I think that that is a first step in upgrading the level of accountability that we hold our members of parliament to. Because right now, just like in this country, your annual disclosure is reviewed. And if there's anything unusual that occurs, it's subject to further review. So I think the TAJ should be given the power to review each member, including the Prime Minister. Review all those tax returns. You have a special staff in the TAJ that should be trained properly and given the power to review and then make recommendations for inconsistent financial disclosures or unusual financial disclosures. Accountability immediately, because if there's a possibility of jail time, I promise you, somebody will find Jesus along the way. Read the second one, Herb.
All annual financial disclosures by all members of parliament must require an affidavit and are subject to a perjury charge if material non-disclosures are found.
So you're the Prime Minister, you file a disclosure, and all of a sudden, it doesn't make sense that your assets went up $100 million. That's a problem. And first, so automatically looking at the perjury charge. Now, again, the requisite organization in Jamaica to review these disclosures is probably the IC or the FID. If it's the FID, there's a possibility that when they review it, they might find more evidence of fraud. Not just non-disclosure, they'll find fraud. And it is in their charter to recommend prosecution. And by the way, none of these, the IC to be subject to the power of the office of the Prime Minister. All these institutions should have like an ombudsman presence where the owner disclose to the people. That's the power of that office. So no political interference hopefully will occur if these gentlemen and ladies are executing their task with integrity. Go to the next one.
Okay. I should mention a material disclosure is defined at an amount greater than 10% of all assets.
So therefore, if you file you're the Prime Minister and you file a financial statement that says my personal net worth is 20 million, and then all of a sudden we find something that you owned rather, or received that was for 3 million. That 3 million is material with respect to the 20 million because it's 15% of what you disclose. Again, we're looking at the materiality, why it was not disclosed, and the source of it.
The addition of stiffer penalties, such as 50%.
Just a minute. Let me ask a question. Are you saying, in other words, if the disclosure is less than 10%, Mike, even if it's fraudulent, it's you don't have a proper source, you would say it's non-material, or are you saying it must meet the criteria of being legitimate in terms of the source, even if it's non-material?
I will accept this, John, that sometimes you will make a mistake in doing something. And the mistake, though, is typically, for the average Joe, not significant. So I was trying to put a marker that says, but if it exceeds 10%, I consider that significant. You understand me? So
yes, I do.
You're giving them the benefit of the doubt if an honest mistake is made. But when an honest mistake is not made and the money is substantial, we must give the necessary authority to the institution that we have designated the power to prosecute. Next one.
Question, Mike. In a circumstance like that, the disclosure annually and so on, how would that be administered? Is it that you'll have a publication of all of these things, and then it's out there for public scrutiny, and what happens then when there is violations, when they fail to comply and all of that stuff? How is it administered?
The authority to review these financial disclosures, I'm not sure who it rests with right now, but it should rest with the FID or perhaps TAJ.
No, but you're talking about different bodies. So that's why I'm asking.
Right. I'm not sure who currently has that. Right. They are required to do financial disclosures now. And I think the IC might be the one looking at each of the disclosures. But notwithstanding, I'm not sure which body has responsibility for reviewing the disclosures. But what I'm saying is, whichever body has that responsibility should be given the power, if not to recommend the FID get involved, but to recommend a criminal review of the matter, depending on how terrible it is.
But here's the thing about that. Because, as they say, practice is set by precedents.
Right.
And what happens is that we know historically, right, looking at the situation that is before us, this report from the Integrity Commission was held up for quite some time. It went through all kinds of craziness and all of that. Right. And part of the problem was the failure of compliance.
Right.
Right. So you know, it's a tricky situation because, again, like we said, you used the term correctly last week, the toothless tiger.
Right.
Right. It's a situation where there is no clear procedure,
Right.
right, and consequences and all of that to outline. So this is where everybody's like not even sure what this is. Some saying it's corrupt, some saying no, it's not corrupt. It's just that you need new laws for curb the disclosure or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this is where the real problem lies.
Right.
Right?
You're
Because
right.
my thing is that all of this is really set. The thing that should be at the root of all of this is a proper constitution.
Mm-hmm. No question about it.
Right? So this is the dilemma we face.
Not even constitution, Pat. But if you needs an injection of courage to set laws that hold each member accountable at the highest level, because you're in public service. So, notwithstanding whether it's FID or TAJ, because here in the States, in the tax department functions as what? A department within the Department of Justice. So if there's a fraud problem, the tax department doesn't have to worry about prosecution. The Department of Justice comes in and says, let's see that. So what I'm saying to you is that perhaps the Ministry of Justice, however, they have to be outside the purview of the minister himself or herself, just wantonly decide, no, we won't pursue that. No, there must be enough transparency there to allow the requisite department to say, we have a problem with this. We're going to refer it upwards. And for prosecution to occur. You can also give the office itself the ability to subpoena, investigate, and file charges, and then the DPP takes over at that point. Again, everything works if there's enough transparency and accountability. Patrick?
Well, what you're saying here, Mike, I mean, you're breaking up again.
Yeah, you're breaking up quite a bit.
A lot. And it's difficult to... Mike, these procedures you have listed,
right?
My feeling is we need... Let me put the thing on the table. This is an issue I think that Waterhouse Vibes should intervene formally with a letter to the newspapers.
I would agree.
Secondly, we need to delineate a set of procedures, not how it should work. Not how it could work, but how it should work. So that the question Patrick is asking, don't have to ask. We are saying this is how it should work from the point of view of cleaning up the system.
Absolutely.
These are the things that should happen.
I agree.
And then anywhere in here where it say could be this or it could be that, we have to clean it up, because we have to say this is how it should go.
Yes, that's true.
For it to be efficient. So I think we should put our heads a little subcommittee, and because this thing is is continuing to boil. In fact, last week we could have said, let's put something in the newspaper. I'm not into what did that mean, St. Lucia, and who did do what. We are just speaking to this issue in Jamaica and saying what the procedure should be.
Yes.
To to more or less guarantee that something like this don't continue. We need to put our stake in the ground and say this is what it is. Now we can work out whose name going to go on it. I'm not afraid to put my name. I am retired. I don't have no job that going to prejudice me, and I can't get arrested if I go to Jamaica. But I wouldn't say I can't, but I don't think it's likely. So we just
somebody might.
we have to work.
Can they reach across the water, John, and get to you?
Can you continue?
We'll let Mikey Nita sign it. Don't worry about it. Him have an uncle, William Churchill.
Hello.
That is so far. That is so far. What I'm saying is, let us agree in principle that a small group will take these things and we try to get something in the newspaper by the end of next week.
But that's not formal though, John. It's better you send it to the Governor General who represent King Charles, and you send it to, I can't even say the Speaker of the House. You may want to try the leader of the Senate. Maybe he has enough.
No. Hear my thing.
I think John is right to publish it.
Hear me, man. It must be published. The most important thing is to publish it. If you want to send it to the Governor General or whoever else.
Yeah, I agree.
All them people at different agency, we can send it anywhere. My thing is that this is sufficiently important to put a stake in the ground that say Waterhouse Vibes or whatever name we go by. You hear, Mikey?
So
I can't hear you. No, when we're done, we want to know if we agree. If we guys here agree that we should put some, plant our flag out there, whatever we want to call it, members of the diaspora, Waterhouse Vibes, whatever name we want to give. This is an occasion to put out there our position on cleaning of what should happen with the appropriate preamble. Everybody agree?
So basically, John, what you're saying is it should be an open letter.
Correct.
Right? So that means it wouldn't be going to no one media house. It would be going to all the media.
Well, to include national media here in the U.S. The New York Times, the Washington Post.
Because that's how you have to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you send it to one or two or selective ones, they may or may not publish it.
Yeah, but all of them can still don't publish it. The idea, let's explore how it's.
You have to give them something salacious, John. You have to give them something salacious, newsworthy.
Yes.
That's why I brought up that we're going back.
Let me suggest this.
Relooking St. Lucia.
Let me suggest this. This sort of, let us continue with what. Let us continue with what Mike was doing. Herb, can you read the stuff so we'll go through it?
All right.
I would suggest that we have a meeting offline. We have a meeting offline and discuss this issue about the publishing that document. Rather than having the discussion right
you're in live. Okay.
Yeah. So let's do that.
Oh, continue.
All right.
Continue.
The addition of stiffer penalties, such as 50% of verified financial irregularities, and authorization of referrals to the DPP without parliamentary approval for all members of parliament.
Explain that.
So, if you lie to the tune of 20 million, and we can prove it, there's an automatic $10 million penalty right there, plus prosecution. Because the way you stop stealing, John, is to take the money. The way you make a rich man poor is to take his money.
That's right.
So therefore, if there's an incentive to steal, and you can prove that there was fraud involved, there's an automatic civil penalty of 50%.
Right.
Plus interest, by the way. Plus interest. So therefore now, they're not only going to pay a fine, which is significant, but now you have
Boy, you're breaking up bad.
Right.
I don't know what causing that.
I'm not called. I was thinking of switching computers, but I might do that still. But like I said, 50% penalty plus interest. So if your fraud is 5 million, all of a sudden you have to come with 2.5 million plus interest. I think that will get your attention.
Yeah, Mikey, Maxine is backstage. You see that?
Okay. Let me bring her in.
So
All
let
right.
me, guys, let me try to switch computers. Give me 5 minutes. I'm gonna switch.
All right.
All right, good. Give me 5 minutes.
Can get some commentary maybe from Maxine from what she's been hearing
Yeah.
and the comments that she's been reading.
I don't see her. I don't see her, bro. She's not. I'm not seeing her. But let's continue the discussion.
Said that she was backstage.
Yeah, but let's
I was
continue
telling
the
you, but
discussion.
you get lost in the conversation.
Yeah. So Herb,
Look, what he's saying there, and this whole thing about accountability. You saw what happened with the Integrity Commission committee this week. Did anybody miss that?
with
When
Delroy
they,
Chuck,
Delroy Chuck and who was the PNP guy again?
Robinson.
Robinson was there, as well as the other representative from East Kingston, Powell,
Yeah.
right? And of course our former mouthpiece from Orlando, Florida, who is the son of the former Speaker of the House. He's the junior, right?
Yeah, Sinclair. No, Charles.
Yeah, Charles. Yes. So when you see people barring the door like that, then you know that they're in no mood to entertain justice for the higher ups, right? If they won't finally,
I didn't get you. When they do what? Bar the door?
they basically bar the door to
Okay.
the referral going to FID,
Right.
right? So it means that they have no interest in the truth, and then they use the excuse that, oh, it's not contained in the regulations governing the Integrity Commission for them to be able to send it over to FID. Just like I saw criminality with the JFF, I see criminality with this particular Prime Minister. If I can make a recommendation to JFF, why can't a more official body like the IC make the same recommendation? Because we all are seeing the same things, right? You don't have to. I mean, come take it for what it is, guys. These guys, the IC never delved into everything that's out there. The KPMG report never came up with them, right? And so the IC is doing what they were originally supposed to do and report on. What is pissing them off is they're saying, oh, so why are they bringing up the report at this time? They brought up the report at this time to show that our prime minister is a damn liar.
Just a
That's what they
second.
brought
Just a
this up.
second, Herb. 1 second,
Yeah.
Herb.
Yeah.
Mike is backstage. Mikey.
Yeah, continue.
Right.
Yeah, continue. Yeah.
They saw where this prime minister has lied. And he continues to lie. What did the man say? He doesn't know of anybody in his party, including himself, who is being investigated. Isn't that what he said, Patrick?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I believe the IC had to make the important move at this point prior to the elections, right? Just like how we want to try Donald Trump prior to the elections, so we know all the nasty stuff that he has done. Let the people know. Let the people decide a just verdict based on examination, a full examination of a background. So now that we have
But
Holness, that his entire history is being laid bare, let's go ahead and get the FID to validate whether there was fraud as well as money laundering involved, and let us go after him, right? That's the bottom line here. But what I saw this committee doing is simply covering up by saying we don't see anything in the regulation that allows us to do this at this time. And why would they want to do this to him now? Why? Where's the justification for presenting a report now? The people want the report. The people have been hungry for this report for the longest while. So now that they've delivered the report, deal with it. Instead, what they do, they start throwing up smoke screens and start telling the Jamaican people, oh, we really don't need this at this point. Yeah, we do. We need it. And this is why it's come out right now. So need to take
because
action. None of these guys have integrity. Not one.
But Mike put it correctly earlier on.
the problem,
Right?
Herb,
Because
the,
what Mike outlined is that accountability is at the foundation of everything. And if you do have proper accountability, that's when breakdown occurs. That's when corruption occurs. That's when
You
there
mean
is
when you uncover corruption?
deregulation.
You uncover corruption.
Yeah.
Right. Not that it
Accountability
occurs.
is at the heart of it.
the problem is this. The problem is this, Patrick. You see, what Mike is outlining as proposals right now are some concrete steps which could put a dent, right, in the execution of the corruption in government. These politicians, these parliamentarians, they had the chance, and they still have the chance, right, over the years to put forward proposals to help build structures and framework to make it difficult for parliamentarians, make it difficult for civil servants to be involved in corruption. But the problem has been that the politicians is just one thing they see in the fight against corruption, and that's the propaganda value that it has against their opponents, right? And the only time corruption comes up as an issue is in the struggle against each other. It's the propaganda, especially when it is coming near to an election. They talk everything and they point fingers at each other. After these politicians get into power, there's no more talk. There's no more talk about prosecuting anybody. There's no more talk about holding people accountable because the propaganda value, it's no longer important to them. Now that we have and I'm blaming both parties, right? The PNP and the GLP, they use the whole corruption issue just as a weapon. They weaponize this thing, right? And when they no longer see it as a weapon, they sweep it under the carpet, right?
Absolutely true.
So
Yep.
I'm glad that Mike is here and that Mike actually spent the time to make these proposals. And that is why I like John's proposal that we should get it out there, right?
Let's finish that.
Because people sometimes have a way, huh? People have a way of saying there's nothing we can do, right?
Good point.
It's part of the process. It's part of the process. But when we can identify, like Mike is doing, right, and show that it don't have to go this way, right? And that's one of the reasons why we are seeing that a lot of people in Jamaica are they're not awakened. We're talking about there's nobody taking to the streets, there's nobody making a holy noise. It is because people know or feel that this thing is not going anywhere, just propaganda, right? So there's no need for them to take to the street because it's soon finished, it's soon blow over,
See,
right?
last the first
So
guy get prosecuted and put in jail, you know. We surpass propaganda value right away, and reality strikes home. The first one that get
yes,
prosecuted and put in jail to serve jail time is all you want, just one in it, and everybody is fall in line.
exactly,
Like everybody's
exactly.
body not wrong till you find them by themselves, and everybody have manners after that.
And can we continue with the recommendation from Mike? Herb?
Okay. Did we talk about publication? I don't think so. Publication of annual financial reports detailing constituent expenditures for appropriated funds allocated by the Parliament.
In other words, each constituency gets money. Each member of parliament gets money for their constituency. There should be a public accounting for that money. A public accounting for that money. Because we're closing all the loopholes here, you know. And everywhere there's a temptation for mischief and stealing, now there's a bright light on it. And the only person to betray that trust is the person willing to go to jail. So let's see how many people want to go to jail now after you publish this information.
But in addition to it being published, Mike, maybe what happens is that there should, it should be information that's readily available on the government website.
Yes.
And at a specific point in time. So I think anybody can pull up the information if they so need it. Any constituent or just any ordinary person.
See, I'm assuming that this money is given at a certain time in the budgetary process. Yes. So when the budget is approved by the parliament, the money is now set. I think then the Gleaner and the Observer should be publishing this information that we have given these members of parliament this much money to spend on their constituents to meet constituency needs. Let the member of parliament feel the heat from their respective constituents to say, how can you not spend the money and fix my road and my road bad for the last 10 years? This is what you want.
And them don't know how much money them get. The
That's the
public
problem.
don't know. It's
That's
a
the
very
truth.
good point.
Yeah.
So public, listen, there is too much secrecy in the process.
Ross,
And you're playing with taxpayer money? Hell no.
go on
Remove
again.
the
Go on
darkness.
again.
Get us all coming to the
I
light.
like all of these points. We just have to put flesh on this thing. What's the next thing?
Allow the Integrity Commission to publish the names of members of Parliament who are confirmed to be guilty of financial irregularities. In other words, let the people raise their voice in the constituency where these guys
Yeah,
come
let people
from.
see what's going on. That there's actually accountability.
What does
Let
that
the
mean?
people see.
What does guilty mean in this context? Where does someone become guilty? Just by apparent, for example, the case we have in front of us.
A due process. We have to practice due process. So
Right.
it goes into the IC sees what they collaborate with FID, and FID is about recommend charges. Okay? At that point, you should be able to publish it. Because the FID will not recommend charges if there's no standing to prosecute.
Hold on a second. Mikey, you see that? Maxine back on.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you do. After the IC goes over it and reviews it, and IC should be talking, and I think as a permanent amendment to the charter for the IC, they should have the ability to retain guys with my credentials in Jamaica.
To what?
They should have the ability to confirm financial irregularities, guys who are familiar with the law, the tax law, general fraud law, and the like. And after they review it, that's why the IC needs more standing. But they have these Mickey Mouse politicians who want to do away with the IC because they don't like what the IC is saying. And that's why you have to give the IC standing. So they're not subject to a banana republic behavior. But
How do you protect? Sorry, I should
Hold on.
Maxine. Yes.
Yeah, let's welcome Maxine to the discussion now. Maxine, we're talking about the corruption, the integrity reports, and the lack of public outcry.
Past that, no. We have some recommendations on
good evening, everyone on the panel and in the audience. Now, I was backstage for a good while, so
Okay.
I was observing the reasoning that was going on. My thought was today's Gleaner had an article. It's called Corruption Fight Stall. It was the main online article. And it had Lloyd Diston, chairman of the Crime Consensus Monitoring and Oversight Committee, Keith Darian, principal director of the FID, and public affairs commentator Howard Mitchell. I think he's a past president of the PSOJ. And they were discussing Jamaica's and the legislators' inability to introduce UWOs, which is the Unexplained Wealth Order, to combat money laundering. And they went on to discuss that this is something been in the legislature or parliament being kicked back and forth for quite a few years now, and that it is a procedure that would empower. I think there's a POCA Act that has to go through the courts or some kind of judicial process. But it seems from the article that because there is so much what you call it?
Red tape.
No, there's so much informal money in the Jamaican economy, billions, as it is reporting, in US dollars, that is tracking through the country. Um, you know, I guess mostly through this scamming. Obviously, the transshipment. Jamaica is a transshipment point now for the Mexicans and so on and so forth. And I know over the years they were always saying that the Jamaica informal economy outstrips the or is as big as or a little bit bigger than the formal economy. So the environment is there, and especially for the article was speaking about political actors and so on who would be sensitive are targeted by this wealth, informal wealth, that they need the UWO to be allowed to investigate just on the appearance, just whatever is being spoken about with the IC and the FID and who is saying what or who is holding on what, that the UWO would supersede that. I think it's in a couple other countries already, Britain and I think Canada. And that it was interesting in the article to see that it's in the parliament, has been there for years, and maybe years of this administration. I don't know. Herb, you could maybe speak on that. But it goes to show that they do know what is going on, and it also brought up constitutional issues between the politicians' private wealth or private. I think there's an assumption that the politician has private wealth, private business, and there's some separation between the private business and the public office. And the lines are so blurred, meaning I'm just saying that the governance structure is aware of these fault lines and is struggling with itself to bring it to heel. I think they said in 2024 it was brought up, the legislation again, the Governor General's speech about the unexplained wealth order in order to tackle what it seems to be obvious around, and that's why I'm curious about how the IC and all of this back and forth, as was being spoken of earlier, that they're jumping in at the middle based on, I guess, this annual report or whatever check. But they were clearly aware, even as this current prime minister was coming in, about these accounts in St. Lucia. I remember it being a big issue, his home. And also, it's interesting. I don't know if by virtue of the prime minister's scenario, what about his wife? Because his wife also was, I don't remember, but both of them were under scrutiny. And I don't, I'm just bringing it in that the governance structure is well aware of this issue and has been struggling to get this order, this procedure to become part of the policy.
Maxine, I will just say this, darling, because I got to run shortly. Political will is lacking, but it's not as complicated as they want to pretend. They just don't have the courage to address it, because you coming in with personal wealth, nobody wants to say you stole whatever you did before, you got away with it, God bless you. But while you're in government, there's a distinct indication that people have enriched themselves even more at an unconscionable rate when they join government. And that's because of undue influence and the like. So therefore, it's not complicated. These are just people who like to talk and like to hear themselves. If you want to do something, you put the rules in place because there's a clear beginning and an end when you come into government. It's simple. When you come in, you file a declaration of your assets. So therefore, we have a starting point. And as each year goes by, you have to file a new declaration. Obviously, anybody, people on this panel included, if you're in government and you go in there, you still want to be making money and making a living. Now, when all of a sudden that change is an outlier where it doesn't fall under the bell curve and it's unusual, it requires some degree of question and investigation.
But here's
And failure to provide appropriate answers is where the rubber hits the road.
here's the thing, Mike, right? And to Maxine's point, right? Herb alluded to it earlier on as well, because Herb said you don't start in the middle of the book, you start at the beginning.
Yeah.
And as as I'm detecting from what Maxine says, now the UWO really is saying unexplained wealth orders.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it stands for,
Right.
right? And stolen assets, asset
Mm-hmm.
recovery initiative. That's precisely what the term centers around. And what that
Okay.
is saying is that a lot of them going into government, like the prime minister himself, right, is bringing in, right, the corruption. It's not that that's where he's actually, getting started. It's there's a track record behind it, you know, and it's his way of further, what would you call it now? Try to legitimize his stolen assets,
Money laundering.
right? Because it is so important, and it is also saying, right, what I'm taking from what Maxine says is that there is you can actually cast a bigger web or a bigger dragnet to bring in some of these people, right? Because there are certain things already in place to really start these investigations, and it doesn't require waiting on any regulation or waiting on any new rules to be set. So that
Quite
that
true.
was my takeaway from what Maxine said.
Christian,
So
let me
there
ask
is a point to that as well.
let me ask this question. Let me ask this question. I listened to the argument presented so far. I think one of the questions we have to address is, should we allow the politicians, given the salary that they are getting just now, to engage in in their own private business while they're serving in the parliament? Because I think
No,
that's a question that we need to settle.
Yeah,
You know,
no.
what
We, we,
do
we
like what
talked about
we
that last week.
yeah, you put your
We talked
stuff
about that
in
last
some
week
kind of
because
escrow,
you
right?
put,
no, 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 no.
You put
But
your so what
no,
does
Patrick, let Herb finish. Why you say Herb?
yeah, there's that there's a escrow account that you can put your stuff. Yeah, what's that called when you the
They are blind trusts.
a blind
They call it a
trust,
blind trust,
right?
where your assets are in a trust, but you don't administer the trust.
Yeah,
You have an executor or trustee, rather, who oversees the trust.
and
And
again, that's what Trump failed to do. That's why he's in trouble now because
Okay,
he kept
but
his hand in the cookie jar and he couldn't extract it.
No, his son did it. His son was a trustee.
But
One of
eh,
his sons.
but
not far enough.
he
Not
was
Anyway,
far
still
enough.
running the show.
it's really irrelevant.
Yeah, He was still running the show,
No, no,
and this
it
is
is.
what
No, it
this
is
prime
not.
minister. By the way, I just want to validate one thing. Um, they were saying that there was no clear indicator as to why the police had to go to the prime minister's house that night after all of this stuff broke, right? But then I was looking at a report that said that the prime minister and none of the 28 accounts his wife was on, name was on it. Is that, and I think I looked and I didn't see. I didn't see his wife. So somehow she stayed clear. But understand now, Rhoda's name was on 3 accounts. And that the prime minister's wife might have pulled a weapon. It's alleged she might have pulled a weapon and fired a shot in the house. So that's why the police had to show up. I don't know if it's true. I heard it on the news, on the blog. So, Mikey, I don't know if you heard anything to that effect.
No,
Mike,
let us
AP people, Ishmael.
Oh, Jesus.
let us.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing too.
We need some humor
Hey,
here
you need
to
to,
play.
hey, hey, Mikey,
Hello.
you need to run this thing bigger. This
Hello.
thing you have to run it bigger.
Hello.
But here's the thing. I pointed out quite clearly last week, right?
Uh-huh.
That back in the 70s, in the 60s, in the 70s, right? There were actually rules in place when
Yeah.
it came to civil servants, right? And what they could do. You cannot employ somebody to do a job, which is what politicians are. They're employed to do a job, right? And you, while operating in the office of the job that you're given, right, is making more money, right? On a right? These rules were in place. Police officers couldn't do anything outside of being a police back in the day.
Yeah, but I'm
And
talking
couldn't
about.
moonlight as a security officer and couldn't do anything else,
Yeah, but we're not talking about back in
right?
the days.
So
We're talking
the
about.
rules were in place.
Yeah, but over the years, that get eroded because you have politicians
Exactly.
in parliament and they're still doing their own private business. So that sort of open up the whole corruption thing. And I think that is something, John, we need to put in as part of the recommendation.
No,
Exactly.
what I understood Mike to be saying, gentlemen and ladies.
No, not what Mike is saying. What I'm suggesting, and the question I'm following up with is the politician getting paid from the parliament, and at the same time, he's doing his private business on the side.
Yes.
That sort of create a conflict.
But Mike take care of that in these rules. The boundaries, when you come into office, there are boundaries.
That was not to take away from Mike thing. Mike was speaking specifically about assets and financial standing.
Correct.
But not in terms of working 2 jobs.
No, whether you have other money, you have other business. Whether you have other business, boundaries are set when you go into office. And what these rules are saying is you have to declare all the boundaries.
Yes, but that's not what Mike is saying. No, but that's not what Mike is suggesting. Mike is saying that we need to have part of our proposal, right?
Yes.
We need to address the whole matter of working as a politician on a day-to-day basis, and at the same time running your business on a day-to-day basis. You can't do both.
Why not?
Well, hey, Patrick, here's the thing. You technically can,
Of course.
Because you have to give some credence to a man who builds his business and the like. But the question then begs is,
So you don't take on the job of a politician.
well, that's the
No.
truth. But the transparency has to be in the process. So if they choose to take on a job
Correct.
as a politician, they're still being transparent in what
I'd
they're
like
doing.
to ask legally. I'd like to ask legally, because the article says that there exists a constitutional right not to do so, bracket, disclose financial history. And even if they're being interviewed under caution, they have that constitutional right not to say anything. And anyone, whether they're innocent or guilty of an offense, tends to utilize that mechanism in not answering anything. So that's a major challenge. This is
Well, not necessarily, Maxie, not necessarily.
what
I'll
is
tell you
that
why.
constitutional right that they're...
It's a self-incrimination to her. It's just same thing here. You have a right to not answer a question if you're gonna harm yourself, legislatively, of criminally or otherwise. However, during the process of an investigation, that due process can uncover things. And if the things that we uncover are very clear as to what happened and it's adversarial to you, dog, eat your supper. So you cannot choose to answer, but if the evidence is there that you did something criminally negligent or the like, it's over. You can do answer all you want. We can still convict you.
So you're talking about two different things, though, Mike.
Right.
You're really talking about avoiding self-incrimination.
Right.
But at the same time, you're not at liberty to disclose what you don't want to disclose.
That's true, but you can't choose to. The fact that you have the option is what's the bright line here.
Yeah, but it can be held against you that you didn't declare it.
Absolutely true. But that's why I went to make my last point. If in the process of an investigation, the evidence points to criminal mischief and the like, then you have to answer for that.
Exactly. Criminally, you answer criminally.
But other than that, no. And I agree.
No. But here's the thing. In a criminal trial, you still don't even have to testify in your own trial.
That's true.
Right? So that's the whole point, right? Criminally, you're exposed. That's a whole different ballgame.
That's true. But if the evidence shows that you're guilty, then dog, eat your supper.
We're going off on a different track.
Yes.
But anyway.
No.
Yes. Are we? Let Mike. I don't even want to comment on this thing about going back to a colonial rule. That's how I see it. If a man build up in business successfully and he want to go into government, there's nothing stopping him. And it don't automatic mean that him going thief. Nor does it mean, right, nor does it mean.
That's not what it's about. What Mike was saying, that's not what that was about. What Mike was saying is, which I agree with totally, is that if I employ you to do a job on a day-to-day basis, part of the condition must be that on a day-to-day basis, I expect you to be carrying out your responsibility of the job, right? And not be focused on running your business at the same time. You can't do both. If you're going to run your business, then go run your business.
But
don't take on this job. Don't take on this job to run in addition with your business.
But let me say this thing, guys, real quick.
Hold on a minute.
Gentlemen.
There is a difference between a performance. If you elect me as a minister for a constituency, and I don't do no work there, it's not about money. It's about measuring my performance in the constituency. The money issue, wait. The money tracking is a different thing. When I come in, you do an assessment of my assets and my liabilities and my income. And after 6 months, you carry out assessment and you see where I have
But
20 million
you're still
more.
misunderstanding, John. You're still misunderstanding.
Well,
That's not what we're talking about. That's
What
not
are
what
we
we're talking
talking
about.
about?
That's not what we're talking about.
So Mike
Right?
gone now. Mike gone now.
Now he said he had to leave. He got something going on.
Yeah, so we
Gentlemen,
need to. Yeah,
gentlemen,
why we don't?
I don't think.
We are almost at 6 o'clock.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So why we don't just agree whether we're going to this letter or not? Is a
No, we're
straight
going to
thing.
meet. As Mike said, we're going to meet.
Yeah, but it
Yes.
does. Meeting doesn't mean that we can agree to the letter. I'm in.
No. Let's meet. It's 6 o'clock. No.
All right. Well, let's meet when.
No.
No.
We don't have to decide that on the live right now. That's not.
No, we don't have to do that on the live, bro. We are on the live.
Yeah, but you're going to cut the live. I thought the live finished at 6.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think Mike wanted to
But
say
let Mike
something.
get back to what I'm doing. Let Mike get back to running the show.
Yeah,
Well,
Mike gone. Mike. Oh, sorry. You mean this Mike?
Yes.
What I'm saying, gentlemen, is this. These are some serious issues and challenging issues. We're not going to resolve the question today. I take it that we are all in support of what John suggests about publishing some recommendation. We all agree on that. There's no disagreement.
Right.
The challenge now is for us to meet at some time. And I would suggest later this week.
Yeah, Mike has to be there. The other Mike.
Yeah, Mike has to be there.
Have to be there. And Herb have to be there.
Have to be there. So the question is,
everybody needs to be part of the discussion.
Come out of the live. Come out of the live.
Okay. Well, let me just thank the listeners for the time, because we have a large community of listeners online. Okay. And
some of them made good suggestions and thanking us for a good discussion.
Yes. So I want to say thank you and encourage the listeners to like and share the Waterhouse Vibes. And remember, we are here every Sunday. Until such time,
yes,
walk good. Okay? Walk good.
And tell everybody howdy.
And don't buck your toe.